1, 2, 3, and go. Okay, we are B'siyata D'Shmaya. We passed Shabbos Bereshis. We concluded the Yom Tov period, which is a lot easier in Israel than Schwartz. They hit by triple header Yom Tov. Baruch Hashem, we were able to celebrate with some of our friends in Yerushalayim on Friday, which was Simchas Torah for Bnei Schwartz. So the main objective of Shabbos Bereshis, and especially in the context of our learning, which is to look at the progress Am Yisrael is making in the Elef HaShishi towards the Tkufa of Mashiach, and to understand our journey and the Avodat Hayom that we need to do at this unique time in our history. The great rabbis of all the generations would always connect the end of the Torah to the beginning. The last phrase, which is Le'enei Kol Yisroel, with the word Breshit. That was the custom by all the big Hasidic Rebbes. That was their drasha for Shabbos Bereshis. And what I'd actually like to do is go back a drop earlier and a drop further. In other words, I'm going to share with you some insights for the very end of Sukkot, which includes Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, where on that day we read the end of the Torah, right? And then we begin immediately with Bereshis. So actually we'll look at a little bigger, a little wider lens about what that transition is and what the Psukim tell us, and a little bit about the creation story in Bereshit, which is important to us, very, very important to us. Okay, so let me begin. If you get the 5 Towns Jewish Times, so my article is on the front page of the Sukkos edition. It's called The Chol HaMoed Circus, and it's speaking about the idea of Simcha Debeit HaShoeva. So let me share with you this idea, which is,
on the internet?
you can get it, go to 5townsjewishtimes.org, ftjt.com probably, and there's a little thing where you can little spyglass, and if allows you to search authors. So if you put in my name, Yaacov Schwartz or Rabbi Yaacov Schwartz, you'll see it. And I actually didn't know it was on the front page until someone told me. My mother, of course. So let's understand. Okay. We begin as follows. The Yom Tov of Sukkot, according to Chazal, you don't fulfill that mitzvah of Sukkah unless you know why you're sitting in the Sukkah. And there are 2 reasons offered. One, Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim, to remind us of the exodus of Egypt. And secondly, Ki b'Sukkos Hoshavti es B'nei Yisrael, I sat the B'nei Yisrael in Sukkos during their years that they had left Mitzrayim and to 40 years that they were in the desert. Now, the question is, why are there 2 remembrances? So we have to know that there were 2 experiences of Sukkot. The Sukkot really remind us not only of physical Sukkot that they might have lived in, but on a greater sense, the Ananei HaKavod. Now, when did those accompany the Jewish people? Starting when? When was the first time that they had an Anan HaKavod, which then at night would transform into an Emud HaEsh? When did that happen? Right, coming out of Mitzrayim immediately. So Zeichel L'Tzias Mitzrayim, we remember the fact that Hashem took us out, and prior to and during and through the experience of Kriyas Yamsuf, we had an Amud Ha'anan protecting us from the Blistarot, from the Scud missiles being fired by the Egyptians, and all the various projectiles, and it would absorb them, and at night, and it would become a fiery Aish, and would also create, therefore, an impenetrable shield for the Jewish people from attack.
Iron Dome.
What's that?
Iron Dome.
Well, even better. So we have the sukkah then being, in that context, a sukkah of protection from harm, right? From all harm. And that's what we're thanking Hashem. In the desert, it was completely uninhabitable. Completely and totally uninhabitable. I'm sure you ladies like also, but to read all the magazines that they send over Yontif, So they had an edition from Mishpacha, which was about 1,000 pages thick. It's getting to be like, I don't know, one of the fashion magazines. I know it's like this thick. So I have to buy it for Shalom Bayis reasons. And I rarely look at it, but I did. And I noticed that they had, for the children, of which I have children that read it, a story of the 7 great deserts of the world. One of which is, we have... Oh, it's Hamodia. One of them. Oh, yeah, Taka, I bought Modia. I actually bought it twice. That shows you how much I read it. I didn't even notice what was on the front page. Okay, but it's a great resource. And it showed the deserts of the world. And of course, Klal Yisrael found its identity in a desert. And in describing the desert regions, they're pashut, uninhabitable to human beings. Maybe some animals can survive there if they're specially created by Hashem in that way. So So the Sukkot are a lot more than just protection from an enemy. They're actually life-sustaining. It created a protective environment that they could survive the hostile conditions of the desert. Forget enemies, right? And that was for 40 years. It was a lot more than a couple days with the Mitzrayim. So therefore, that's the mitzvah that you have to think about when you're sitting in the sukkah. And if you're not thinking about that mitzvah, then you haven't performed the mitzvah of sukkah. Because sukkah has to have, it's not only a physical performance, but it's a cognitive and emotional state that you have to feel the protection of Hashem and His bitachon and emunah in Hashem. Lech teich acharai be'eretz lo zarua. That the Jewish people were bold enough to follow Hashem into a completely uninhabitable situation. Now think about that from your own context. How easily would you have been willing to march into a desert of snakes and scorpions with impossible temperatures, no food and no water, because Hashem said so? And the reason why you would is because you saw the Ananei HaKavod leading you, and Moshe Rabbeinu telling you that it's going to be okay. I'm going to provide for you man, I'm going to provide for you slav, and when they needed meat, etc., and water, Be'er Miriam. So, given that that's the case, why was there was a little bit of a break, a dangerous break, between the time of the first Ananei HaKavod, the Zeicha L'Tziat Mitzrayim ones, and the ones that came back on Sukkot? There was a break. Why was there a break of protection for us? Because what did Klal Yisrael do during that first year? Chet HaEgel, right? They left Pesach, right? Shvi Shel Pesach is Kriyas Yamsuf. They continue forward in their journey. About a month later, they're getting ready for 50 days later, they're getting ready for Matan Torah. And right after Matan Torah, immediately after Matan Torah, is the Chet HaEgel. That's not a long time. What happens to the Ananei HaKavod? Zoop, they disappear. Because that dearness and closeness and intimate protection of Hashem is like a intimate relationship between Hashem and Am Yisrael was unfortunately tested. So Moshe goes up and davens 40 days and another 40 days. First 40 days that we should be forgiven. Second 40 days that the relationship should return, culminating in Yom Kippur, where we get the second luchos. And guess what happens right then and there? The Ananei HaKavod come back in time for Sukkot. So there's really 2 Ananei HaKavod episodes, and therefore kind of 2 things. The Zeicha L'Tziat Mitzrayim ones that we got immediately, and the ones that we regained, that we earned through tshuva. And then what was the pinnacle point of that tshuva? Which day was the big day in which everything is forgiven? Yom Kippur. And then immediately after Yom Kippur, you're supposed to go straight and do what? What's the first thing you're supposed to do? Go build your sukkah. And then after that, go get your daled minim. Now, so what happened in Sukkot, during Sukkot, was that we have a mitzvah to celebrate in the Beis HaMikdash with Hashem 7 days with our lulav and esrog. We only take a lulav and esrog 7 days outside the Beis HaMikdash because there unfortunately is no Beit HaMikdash right now. So Zecher LeMikdash, right? The Tanoim made a rule that you have to take it in Gvulin, in your own, wherever you are. Even in Chutz La'aretz, except on Shabbos, of course. So we are recreating the Simcha. What is the Simcha of carrying around a lulav and esrog? What is the Simcha of carrying around a lulav and esrog? The Simcha is that, according to Rav Soloveitchik, he explains that mitzvah is we were forgiven. We got the sukkahs back. That's what we're carrying around a lulav and esrog for. Now, what does that have to do with a lulav and esrog? Who can tell me? What was the thing that brought Anan Yaakov back? Yom Kippur. What happened on Yom Kippur? We did tshuva. We were cleansed. What does that have to do with the lulav and esrog? What does the lulav and esrog represent? All of Klal Yisrael, right? Coming together to do tshuva. But also, it represents each individual Jew. The heart of the Jew is the esrog. The lulav is the spinal column, and our intelligence. The aravos, right, are what part of our body? The mouth. And the hadassim are the eyes. We've looked at the activities of each of those parts of our body, and we've inspected them. And what we've come to a conclusion is that, okay, we're doing the tshuva that's necessary. Tshuva for our heart, whether it was the averos that can happen in the heart, jealousy, this, that, lotachmod, the averos with thinking, the averos with our eyes, the averos with our mouth, etc.
Is that why some people go every day to the kosel?
Absolutely, right on target. So according to the Rambam, if you show up at the Beis HaMikdash, even today, because the sanctity of the Beis HaMikdash never left. Because when Ezra HaSofer came back with the second Beis HaMikdash, his conquest of it was not a military one, because the Jewish people were not in military control. Who was in military control of the land of Israel when Ezra comes back? Who gave him permission to come back? The Persian kings, right? The Persian kings, and later the Greek kings were in charge, and then the Romans. We were never in charge except for the brief period of the Hashmonaim. Those 200 years, well, not so brief, but more than 100 years, we were independent. But that was the only time. So what made it a Beis HaMikdash? If we didn't own the territory, it was the Hashras HaShechina, the Shechina's presence. Because we know and we believe that the Aron Kodesh, two opinions in the Gemara, but it seems to be the authoritative opinion is that Yoshiyahu HaMelech hid the Aron Kodesh inside the labyrinths of the Beis HaMikdash below ground, which were prepared already by Shlomo HaMelech, who knew in his lifetime that this wasn't working out the way he had hoped. Hashem told him this is not the final stage. So therefore he prepared a hiding place for the Aron Kodesh. The Aron Kodesh is there. One day it's going to come out. One day they're going to find it, or it's going to rise up, or whatever's going to happen, but it is there. Okay? So by virtue of that, there's Kedushas HaMikdash. Oh, guess what? If there's Kedushas HaMikdash, then you can take your lulav esrog and v'samachta lifnei Hashem. And you can, what's the simcha? The simcha is, from this place, we were granted tshuva. Slicha, mechila, and kapara. The Shechina has reunited with us. And we're celebrating our new selves, our new purified selves, at the place of the Shechina. And we're having that reunion. Now, what happened at night during the Sukkot celebration? What happened at night? What did that entail? The fifth parak of Sukkah tells us that they took out all the instruments, right? And the main instrument that's kind of like the prototypical instrument is called, who knows? It's a very Israeli thing. The Chalil. Correct, the Chalil. What is a Chalil? A Chalil is a flute. How do you play a flute? You hit it. You hit the openings. You blow, and you manipulate the openings with your fingers, right? It's called being makeh bechalil. Makeh meaning you're hitting the openings to close them and open them as per whatever the music entails. So it says the Chalil would play in the Beis HaMikdash at night, either 5 or 6 nights. Why? Because it did not overrule Shabbos or Yom Tov. So the first day of Yom Tov, there was nothing. The second night of Yom Tov, if it wasn't Shabbos, right, then they went and started their preparations. And what were the preparations? Who knows? What did they do? So it's Mishnah tells us, and it's fascinating Mishnah. It really is fascinating. It's worth hearing it inside. It says, what they did was, Mishalo Ra'ah, this is the Mishnah in Sukkah. Daf Nun Aleph Amud Aleph. Mishalo Ra'ah Simchas Beis Shreiva, Lo Ra'ah Simcha Miyamav. Someone who didn't see it never saw Simcha. This was the greatest. B'motza Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag, right? Because it didn't happen on Yom Tov. The next day, Yordu le'Ezras Nashim. Interesting. Where was the Ezras Nashim in the Beis HaMikdash? Does anybody know? There was the place where the Leviim stood. Inside that is called the Azara. That's for the Kohanim only, right? And then behind that was known as an Ezrat Yisroel. That was for the men. And then behind that was a rather large courtyard, which was called Ezrat Nashim. Ezrat Nashim. So it was kind of like in a shul, except there wasn't a mechitza down the middle. There was the men ahead, the women behind, so the men wouldn't look at the women ostensibly, and that's how it was designed.
They needed a mechitza.
So the question is why? So what they did was, this was the great thing that they did. Metaknim sham tikun gadol. What did they do? Minorot shel zahav hayu sham. They put golden candelabra that were there the whole year round just for this purpose. Va'arba svalim shel zahav b'rosheim. 4 golden bowls. Now, va'arba sulamos. To each bowl had a ladder. Now these menorot were 50 amos high. Does anybody know how many feet that is? That's 75 feet high, going up a ladder to fill it with oil. And who did that? Yeladim mipirchei kahuna, youths, strong youths, ubiyadehem kadim shalmeya ve'esrim lug. And they had 120 lug. Now, a lug is heavy. It's like 60 ounces, something like this. It's a lot. It's almost astronomical to think that they were able to carry 120. Some Mefarshim say together they did 120. The Gemara says 30 each. Even 30 lug is like 900 ounces. How much is 900 ounces of olive oil weigh? I mean, if you pick up a bottle like this, how many ounces is this? Like 16 ounces? 32. This is 32 ounces? Fine. Can you imagine somebody carrying 30 times this? 30 of these filled with oil. How do you do that? It's an act of immense strength. It's actually a daredevil act. It's like a circus, because who can go up 75 feet high, carrying heavy things, and everybody's looking up and wondering if they're going to fall? Now, in addition to that, the numbers are weird a little bit. Why 4 bowls and why 120 lugim, okay? Why that bedafka? Now, what did they do? They took the worn-out pants of the Kohanim and their belts and made wicks out of them. They didn't make wicks out of their ketonet, out of their jacket, which was bigger. Another question: why not? Or the Rishonim asked this question. Why did the Mishnah say only the pants and only the belts? Okay. The next question here, it's a curiosity, is what did they do? They would light them. There was not a courtyard in Yerushalayim that wasn't lit up by this fire, because since it was so tall, it was 50 amos tall, the light went over the compound of the Beis HaMikdash into, I guess, Ir David, or wherever everybody was living at that time. Up on, the burnt house, that area. Now, then what happened? Chasidim v'anshe Maisa hayu merakdim lifneihem. The great rabbis were in front of them, and they were singing. And what did they have in their hands? Avukot shel or biyadeihem, flaming torches. Rashi says, either 4 or 8, that they juggled. They didn't walk around like this with a torch. That anybody can do. What they did was they either juggled 4 or some of them as much as 8 fiery torches. Again, why 4? Why 8? Why juggle? Why torches? Okay? They have all the light. The torches are not adding light because you have this tremendous lighting system. It's like a stadium that's all lit up. So why do they need to carry around torches for and juggle them? It was obviously not for light. It was for juggling. Okay, now, and then they proceeded down to go get the water. And this is called Simchat Beit HaShoeva. Now, what's the reason for this? Why did they do this? What's the point of all this? What is the point? So some people say, and the Gemara, suggests, there's a famous pasuk that everybody knows. It's a song. Shaftem Mayim Bisasam Imay Yeshua. They were at the end of the evening's festivities, which began in the afternoon, mincha time, and didn't end until morning. The Gemara says no one slept. They only slept as if they leaned on their friend and drimmeled a little bit. Drimmeling is, right? That's what we do during shiurim. I'm only kidding. L'chaim. Hopefully not. So they didn't let them sleep. What's going on over here? And they did it every single night. The only night they had off was Shabbos and Yom Tov. Right. And the only reason they had off on Yom Tov is because they didn't want to play the instruments on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Which is in itself problematic because why not? In Beis HaMikdash we play instruments, right? That's another question. Why would this be any different than a carbon, right? If the reason is because we're drawing water from the well to be poured on the Mizbeach, which is what they did every morning. They would draw water from the Gichon well, which, by the way, they did it on Shabbos too. They just brought the water inside the Beit HaMikdash, so they wouldn't have to carry from outside inside, because that's not a part of the service to go carry it. You can prepare whatever you can prepare Erev Shabbos. You're supposed to prepare, right? But why can't they play the instruments on Shabbos? Why is the pouring of, if this party is about pouring the water, then play the instruments like every time. And why not? Why do they shut it out? And the Khalil, we'll get to the Khalil, is a very special instrument. It wasn't played all the time. It was only on 12 days a year that they let the Khalil be added. On the 12 days that an individual says Hallel, because it's a unique Musaf davening. Which are those 12 days? 7 days of Sukkot. What else? 1 day of the first day of Pesach, because just like we say Chatzi Hallel on the rest of Pesach, because there's no additional Musaf sacrifice. But on Sukkot, it's the 70 parim, so it's descending number. Everything's a little different. So every day of Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, first day of Pesach, and when we shech the Karban Pesach, during that time, the Leviim would sing and play all the instruments, including the Khalil. So the Khalil is like the apex of happiness. Apex.
And Shavuos.
What?
And
Shavuos. And Shavuos being that. They don't count Hanukkah because Hanukkah doesn't have a Musaf. But of course, those are the days that an individual recites Hallel, and of course an individual recites Hallel on Hanukkah too.
Why did you get 12?
No, it was 12. It's 7 days of Sukkot. 8 is Shmini Atzeres. 9 is first day Pesach. 10 is Shavuos, which was only 1 day. And the Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. The first group that Shech did and the second. That's it. Khalil was only admittable during those times. So, if every day during the Karban Tamid in the morning, when we pour the water that we're all excited about, we play the Khalil, and the Khalil is the name that the rabbis give to the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. The Khalil is Makeh. That's the description of the party. The band is playing. That's what they call the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, the playing of the Khalil. So why didn't they play the Khalil at night? I mean, come on. Okay. So in order to explain this, and this will take us into Bereshis. So in the Rambam, as you recall, he says that the real party was nothing to do with the water. It has to do with the lulav and the esrog. Notice, it's not called Simchat Beit HaShoeva. It's called Simchat Beit HaShoeva. It's not called Simchat Nisuch Hamayim. In fact, in what I read you, which element of the 4 elements was featured? Earth, air, fire, or water? Well, you would think water. But in the party, in the actual Simchas Beit HaShoeva, what was the big deal? The giant menorah filled with oil and fiery wicks from the clothing of the Kohanim. The juggling, right? The juggling acrobatic feats of the rabbis and their songs. You know what songs they sang? The Gemara says they sang a song of tshuva. They said, thank you Hashem if I never did Averos from the time I'm a child, and thank you if I did that I was able to do tshuva. What kind of happy songs are that? That's personal information. I don't need to know whether this rabbi is about tshuva, that rabbi is about tshuva. What are they singing about? They should go around saying, Shafte Mayim Bisasom, dance around with the water. And why? There was another problem. They insisted that this whole party be in the Ezrat Nashim. Guess what happens at parties when there's a lot of singing and dancing and probably eating too? There's mingling. And mingling was a problem. It's called Kalot Rosh. It was a kibitzing around, people talking, joking, saying, hi, how are you? And you know what? Is that proper for the Beis HaMikdash? The Beis HaMikdash is a place you have to have yira, mora. It's a place of tshuva. It's a place of karbonos. You're not supposed to. Even the Levim song was a graceful song. It wasn't what we're talking about here, which was wild and acrobatic. And they had problems because they first had the women inside, the Gemara says, and the men were coming to talk to them. So they put the women outside and the men inside. That didn't help. And what did they end up having to do? Build the balconies. One big problem with that, though. Balconies change the architectural style of the Beit HaMikdash itself. It's a change to the construction. And every aspect of the construction of the Beit HaMikdash was given by the Nevi'im. You can't mess with that. They had to find a special heter in a pasuk that they reminded themselves that you're allowed to build a gallery. So why were they so insistent on the gallery? What? Don't invite the women. Don't invite the children. Have the men do it separately, or have the women have their own party. Just take it off Beis HaMikdash property. It's almost comical and unusual that they were so forbearing that they tried this solution and tried that. Forget the whole thing. Who needs it? Why does everybody have to be there? Right? Or why can't we just separate everybody? Why does it have to be a gallery? And then the women have to be there, and the men have to be, but we don't want the mingles. Why? Okay. So now, this is the answer, according to the Rambam. Rav Soloveitchik says this too, and other Achronim say too. There's a Rav Deimik Bracha, Rav Pomerantz, who was a Rav in Petach Tikva, was a big Achron, wrote about it in Sefer too, in the Rambam's Shita. He says, what was Simchas Beis HaShoeva? Nothing to do with water. It means the house with which we draw Ruach HaKodesh, which we connect to the Shechina. Okay? It has nothing to do with water. Notice it's called Beit HaShoeva. Beit, the house. Which house? The Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash, where we are Shoev Ruach HaKodesh, where we draw back the clouds of the Sukkah. Come back. That's what we're happy about. So just like we celebrate with the lulav during the day, we celebrate with the fiery torches and with the chalil at night. Okay? Because it's the same celebration, the return, the remarriage, so to speak, of Hashem and the Jewish people. And that, of course, now do you understand why the women had to be there? Did you ever hear of a wedding that there was no women? It wouldn't be much of a wedding. The kala is somewhere, it doesn't work. You need Eidim, you got to have the kala there, you got to see. If the kala is there, her mother has to be there. If her mother's there, her friends have to be there. And the children have to come along because this one has a child, and the mother herself may have a baby, especially like in Hasidic circles, right? So the women and children have to be there. It's a wedding. Insist that they be there. It's a wedding. It's a remarriage. Or a first marriage after a broken engagement. I think that's probably a more accurate way to describe it, as we'll see in a moment. So what are we celebrating? We are celebrating the fact that Hashem accepted our tshuva and brought back the or, the light of Torah. Now you understand why they made a big deal about the light, that every single courtyard should be connected to the return of the light of the Shekhinah. Because remember, what did that cloud turn into at night? fire. This is my only piece that I'm adding. I'm putting this all together. Everything else the rabbi said. I just kind of like sew the parts. This is the celebration of the fiery clouds of glory. Hence, the rabbis juggle the fire to emphasize that that's the simcha, that the fiery clouds of glory have returned to protect us. And then they talk about tshuva. That's what their songs are about, tshuva. Of course they're about tshuva, because that's why the fiery things came back. And the rabbis, who are the ones who are ostensibly the greatest of the Ovdei Hashem, right? And therefore the one who helped us the most in being worthy to do tshuva, help us do tshuva, they're the ones that perform, And they stand on their thumbs. The Gemara says that one of the rabbis stood on his thumbs and got injured, seriously injured for the rest of his life. It's a remarkable feat of strength. Now you understand why they wanted, carefully now. So far so good, everything's understood. I know I gave you a lot of information, but it's understood, yes? Clear? Why 4 torches? What does the Lulav and Esrog represent beyond Klal Yisrael and beyond our body construction, our Tselem Elokim, as it were? It also represents the divine name, which is how many letters? 4 letters. Yud, K, Vav, K. That's what came back. The name Yud, K, Vav, K is the name with which Hashem relates to Am Yisrael. That's our name, which is why you're not supposed to go spread it around, because it's not for everybody, right? Did you ever get the knocks on, you knock on the door? I remember as a kid, you'd get the J witnesses knocking on your door, right, wherever it was, with the brochures. They had these nice brochures and everything, and all they want you to do is yell out Yud Kei Vav Kei all over the world, which is exactly an Aveira according to us. It's exactly the opposite. Of course, they want it. They want to claim it for themselves, but they can't. Because there's a unique marriage between Hashem and the Jewish people through what? Through the Torah. Period, end of story. If there's no Torah, right, then it's tenuous, the connection between Hashem and the Jewish people. It's there, but it can easily, fade. So, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Lulav and the Esrog are Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is why, according to Sfard, how many times do you shake the Lulav in Hallel, Nusach Sfard? 4 times, 1 for each letter. The An Hashem, you do it on Hodu, the first Hodu, the first An Hashem Mashiach, everybody is shaken away, but if you do Nusach Sfard, like the Hasidim, you do it only 4 times, because there's 4 letters. That's like from the Kabbalah, 4 letters. Because the Lulav and Esrog represent the 4 letters. You can understand that the, like the Hadas is like the Yud, a little bit. It's like kind of backwards, If you look at it, the 4 species, the Vav is the Lulav. You understand? It's a creation, because, by the way, the Torah is all about the letters of Hashem's name, and that's the root of creation. That's how man was created. That's how everything was created. Okay. So 4 lamps represents the return of the Shekhinah to Klal Yisrael, the 4 letters. 4 ladders, 50 amos high. What's the worst level of Tumah that you can reach? The 50th level of Tumah. Now you understand why they went into a 50 amma ladder? We climbed out of that deep hole. We got all the way out of it. And every family did it. It's a collective tshuva. Every household was lit by the light of tshuva.